why are we sending round papers or presentation slides in advance and then going through them page by page during the meeting? Why? Can we not all just agree that we're adults and we can read them in advance and then come with our questions or discussion points?
Like, these are the ones that we're going to discuss. Everything else is for information. I haven't quite got brave enough though to use Elmo. Have you heard Elmo? Enough, let's move on.
Oh, yeah.
But I love the concept, and I even it's too bit brash for me even. There's nothing more wasteful of everyone's time than sitting here and rehearsing the entire last meeting that we just had.
I find it really difficult presenting papers because I do read minutes, or at least especially if I wasn't there. I'll skim them if I was, but if I wasn't there, I'll check before I go into the next meeting. But what I really dislike is when I'm asked to present something to a senior committee, it's the time of year for adjusting and reapproving the admissions policy, for example, for the new cycle. I really dislike going in and when a chair asks me to summarize everything, I'm like, no, you should all have read this. I'm here to answer questions. And I went to Senate last week to present the admissions policy where I currently am, and the chair, the VC, said, assuming that we have read all of the policy and your covering sheet, is there anything that was missing that you need to add? And I was like, I like this woman. This is how you run a meeting. And I was like, I have nothing to add. Does anyone have any questions? No, please. All good. Yes, because I find it very annoying when I've written a blasted report or a piece of analysis and no one's bothered reading it. That really annoys me. And I hate listening to people because I will have read the papers for a meeting. Reading out their whole blasted thing again, I find that really annoying.
I become the person that starts defending the person that's visiting to propose something. Right, we've all been in that meeting, right, when someone else asks a question and the question is answered in the document that was provided. So I always try and jump in and be like, well, on page 3. But I've had the experience of, I went on maternity leave while I was on a quite important committee, and then I came back and I read all the minutes of the meetings while I was gone to pick up. And then what would happen is I would be in a meeting and I'd be like, I wasn't there, but according to the minutes, this happened. And I remembered the meetings better than the people who were there. Because that's the thing. People don't read the minutes because they were there, so they think they remember it, and they don't remember it.
Because half the meeting, they're off camera, sending emails and responding to chats and doing other work, and then they haven't actually got any of the conversation.
Okay, so my question is, has anybody ever actually received any training about how to chair or secretary a committee? Well, of course you did, Rachel.
When I worked in local government, I did do a minute writing. I've done minute writing training, but I have never had any training on chairing. I think it's a bit like management. If you've seen good chairs in action, you learn a lot from it. Unless you've seen good chairing, you don't know what it looks like. I think, like with management,
I'm lucky because one of my colleagues is amazing. She would love this conversation. She's like, yes, the meeting is to talk about the documents we all read in advance. But she put together a committee chair best practices document, which of course I read.
I was going to say, how many people
have read it? Because that's always her argument. Like, is anyone taught how to do this? The other thing I've done when I took over a chair recently, I met with the previous chair, and then I also met with 2 other people in the committee I trusted and said, what did you like about what that person did that we should keep doing, and what do you think could have been done better that I could try?
Stop, start, continue.
I received full, very extensive committee, not just minute taking, but committee servicing training by a wonderful woman called Jean Greer, who used to work at the University of Edinburgh. And I believe the training was developed on behalf of the AUA, or AHEP as was, AUA as was, AHEP now. And it was excellent. And it included things like creating chairs notes, which I think most people don't do. And I think is such an underrated resource. And I actually think if you can develop the skill of being a good committee secretary, you can get such good insight. It's like a real career move, I think, for people who are in those kind of junior, slightly, coming up through the ranks roles. If you want to progress, I think taking on a committee secretarying responsibility and doing it well can be such a power move.
Yeah. And because also it's demonstrating, because the chair is usually someone quite senior, so it's an opportunity to demonstrate, your competence and everything. I do chairs agendas, but I think I don't think people get so much training now, and I also think that sometimes the tools and technology we have lends itself towards that sort of laziness, because you don't need to like print out the papers anymore. You don't actually have to physically have the papers, so you're not trying to help them not have to shuffle through all their papers to look at the report. You're putting notes in them, because I used to do it for exam boards and things like that. Always put things, I would put even just like who they had to introduce. This is this person's first committee meeting, the last person, whatever. And they always are grateful when they look like they've really got it together, and they don't have to they can trust that they haven't had to do that level of detailed prep, because they've been guided by you. And I also think if you've seen a really good chair secretary, committee secretary dynamic, it's like it's a dance. it's wonderful, but underrated, I think, really underrated set of skills.
Minute taking. I'm worried about in the age of AI. I'm going to hold on to. I'm very good at minutes. It was the thing I loved doing the most.
Yeah.
When I was in professional services, and I loved being committee secretary. And I worry, like, I don't want an AI transcript. I want a very well trained minute taker who knows exactly the purpose of the minutes to take them for me.
But the thing is, right, if that person is the full secretary of the committee and they've prepared the chair's briefing, then they basically have written most of the minutes in advance, because against each agenda item, it says what the purpose is. Like, are we expecting a decision, a discussion? Like, what's the outcome here? Then you just have to go through and like tick, that was agreed as discussed, like as predicted. There are so many people though who don't get how to take minutes. It's like such a weird thing. I've tried to train so many people in how to do good minutes, and it's like seems to be one of those skills, you get it or you don't.
And it's interesting. I've noticed. So if you try and train somebody new how to do minutes and get them to minute a committee or a set of meetings, but they don't understand enough of the content, they really can't minute it in any way that is meaningful or useful. They just end up, he said this, she said that. It's not a set of minutes, it's just a transcript. And it's and I noticed that, and that was a lesson I learned on the fly when I had a more junior person who was new with us, and I was trying to get them some experience and trying to get them trained up and that sort of thing, and realized that they had no clue what anybody in the room was talking about. So they were just sort of throwing something down on the page, and it didn't make any sense when you read it back, because so there's a certain level of understanding of the content required to be really good. And again, it helps if you're the person preparing all the papers. But the other thing I was going to say was that I've noticed, because in my new role, I'm going to both chair one committee, but then I'm also secretary for another committee. And in the role, you assume when you get to a certain seniority that you don't have to do that anymore. And then suddenly it's like, oh, I'm going to be doing both. And yeah, that switch of mindset is going to be really interesting. Anyway.
No, I'm going to argue with you about that needing to know what's going on in the meeting thing.
So
yeah, so my very, very, very first job out of uni was like a 6-week temp contract on the Isle of Wight Council, very random. Had the most amazing manager who let me I didn't realise how cool she was at the time, but she saw potential and let me fly, and I took minutes at council meetings. I guess she took her own notes as well. I think two things really strongly. One, if you haven't already learned how to do minutes without a computer, you write too much down. So when you've got they tend to do more of that verbatim stuff when they've got a laptop keyboard in front of them. But obviously I was trained with pen and paper, and you can't write as much down, and you have to be succinct and synthesize as you go. But the second thing is that I've always had a knack for it straight out of uni, and I think it's my academic training. So I did history degree, to synthesizing like massive amounts of information down into really small amounts of information, something that one of the few skills I did learn at university. And I think that, again, this is where technology makes that harder, because you can get down too much information when you're typing, which actually you're not, they're trying to get down what they're hearing rather than what you're doing when you write minutes, which is synthesizing and filtering before you put it down. So when I was training someone not so long ago, they were struggling, and I thought, so I made them ditch the laptop, made them do it pen and paper, because I said, you need to slow down and reduce less. So because I remember writing minutes, that first job, it was like some kind of working group type thing, and they were talking about something. I had no idea what it was. I wrote a decent set of minutes, and at the end I said, like, out of it, but I said to her, what's this company they kept talking about? And it was what's that beauty company? Is it Liz Earle, which is based on the Isle of Wight. But I was like, what's Liz Earle? Like, I didn't know, because I didn't realize what it was.
Right, it's acronyms and minutes where you're like, clarify.
Just put it phonetically. But yeah, so I think for me it's a skill thing about synthesizing information. And if you can do that, you don't need to know the topic. But again, if you don't have those skills, then I think you do need to know it. But I also, worth trying with a junior staff member struggling with it, get them to do it with pen and paper, write minutes the old-fashioned way, see if that helps.
The best way I've found to do training is to sit with them. So both of us would attend as the clerk of the meeting, and we would both minute it live. And then afterwards I would go through and say, tell me what you put for point 1. How did you come to that decision? Like, show me your workings out. And then I'm like, this is what I put down, and here's why I did that, and really compare the thought process rather than the wordsmithing. And that seems to work. And I was like, this is going to seem like an enormous amount of work, but it will be better than the 6 hours you would spend trying to whittle down your verbatim notes.
Yeah, I think I was thinking more where if you can't identify what's important out of the conversation, it comes back to this isn't for minutes, and then knowing when the topic has moved. Like, if you can't recognize when the topic is moved past.
But again, that also really helps if you have a good chair who will go, okay, so in summary, these are the actions, this is who's responsible, this is when it's needed by, next action, next point, blah, blah, blah. Like,
I always tell colleagues to be pushy on that. Like, if it's not clear, ask. So, for the purpose of the minute,
for the sake of the minutes,
what was the final decision, or who's taking who is taking ownership of that? Because just because you're not a decision maker in that room, you absolutely can challenge if you don't think. And if your chair's not doing it properly and there is no clear decision, then as the secretary, it's your job to make sure they know that there is. I'm not quite clear on the decision and the accountability here. Could you just confirm for me?
Yeah,
I'll take my own notes as chair now. We have every committee chair has a secretary who's taking the minutes, and of course I trust them. But I also essentially take my own, and part of that is because I'm taking my task list down. Right, I know when I walk out of the meeting as a chair, I'm going to have quite a long task list, and I have to follow up on things. But it is also sometimes so I can, because I think my minutes are better, and minute taking is very important.
Very important.
Not just minute taking, secretarying, the full committee servicing.
The full experience.
Full committee servicing. How to put an agenda together, everything, formatting.
Oh, here we go. Trivia. What's the most important information on an agenda?
Where and when?
Yeah. When is the meeting? Where are you meeting? Especially in the age of Zoom, where's the Zoom link?
Thanks for joining us, Eleanor. Can you give us a goodbye? See you next time.
But not me.